At some point in a trader's journey, the frustration changes shape. In the beginning, it's loud and external. You blame the market, the broker, the strategy, the news, the liquidity, the manipulation. Every loss has a reason outside of you. But if you stay long enough, if you actually keep trading through cycles instead of quitting, the frustration becomes quieter and heavier. You stop blaming the market and start questioning yourself. You notice patterns that are impossible to ignore. You don't just lose trades, you lose them the same way, over and over again. You move stops. You enter early. You hesitate. You overtrade after losses. You close winners too soon. And the most unsettling part is not that it happens, but that you know it's going to happen while you're doing it. This is usually where traders begin to talk about discipline. They say they lack discipline, or patience, or emotional control. They start searching for ways to fix themselves. They read books, watch psychology videos, journal more, create stricter rules, add penalties for mistakes, promise themselves they'll do better tomorrow. And yet nothing fundamentally changes. The same mistakes repeat, sometimes in smaller size, sometimes with new rationalizations, but always with the same underlying behavior. At this stage, trading feels less like a technical challenge and more like an internal conflict you can't seem to resolve. The mistake most traders make is assuming that rule breaking is a character flaw. They think they are weak, impulsive, undisciplined, or not cut out for trading. But this assumption is wrong, and worse, it keeps them stuck. Because the real reason you keep breaking your trading rules has very little to do with discipline and almost nothing to do with how well your rules are written. You break your rules because, in the moment, following them feels emotionally unsafe. This is difficult to accept because it challenges the idea that trading decisions are rational. Most traders like to believe that if they know the probabilities, understand risk management, and have a proven strategy, their behavior should naturally align with logic. But trading does not happen in a vacuum. It happens inside a nervous system that evolved to survive uncertainty, not to optimize expectancy curves. When you place a trade, your brain doesn't only process numbers and charts, it processes threat. The uncertainty of the outcome, the possibility of loss, the feeling of being wrong, the anticipation of regret. All of these are interpreted on a physiological level before you ever consciously think about them. Once that threat response is activated, your primary objective shifts from executing the plan to reducing discomfort, and this is where rules begin to break. Consider what actually happens when price moves toward your stop loss. On paper, the stop is part of the plan. It's logical, predefined, and necessary. But emotionally, it represents confirmation that you might be wrong. It represents loss, not just of money, but of correctness, competence, and control. When that moment arrives, your nervous system reacts. Tension increases, breathing changes, focus narrows, and suddenly, moving the stop feels less like breaking a rule and more like protecting yourself. You're not thinking about expectancy, you're thinking about relief. The same dynamic plays out with winning trades. Letting a trade run sounds easy in theory, but in practice, it requires tolerating the possibility of giving back open profit. That possibility feels like a threat because the brain experiences unrealized gains as something already owned. When price pulls back, it feels like loss, even if the trade is still positive. Closing early becomes a way to escape that discomfort. Again, the rule is not forgotten, it is overridden. This is why traders can follow rules flawlessly on demo and fall apart on live accounts. On demo, there is no real emotional risk. The nervous system stays calm, so logic stays in control. On live accounts, even small amounts of money introduce perceived danger. The body reacts first, and rational explanations follow afterward. By the time you analyze what happened, the decision has already been made. Many traders respond to this by tightening rules or adding complexity. They believe more structure will force better behavior, but complexity rarely creates discipline. It creates negotiation. The more rules you have, the more opportunities you give yourself to justify exceptions. The plan becomes something you argue with instead of something you execute. And when emotions are high, the side that argues for comfort almost always wins. There is another layer to this that most traders never examine: identity. Trading rules don't exist in isolation. They interact with how you see yourself. If being right matters deeply to you, losses feel personal. If you tie your self-worth to performance, every losing trade becomes a threat to your identity. If you need trading to work financially or emotionally, the pressure intensifies even more. Under these conditions, rules that allow losses feel intolerable. Breaking them becomes a way to defend who you believe you are. This is why some traders break rules more after winning streaks, while others break them after losses. The trigger is different, but the mechanism is the same. In both cases, emotional arousal increases. After wins, confidence turns into attachment. You feel in sync with the market and start believing outcomes should go your way. Rules feel restrictive. After losses, fear takes over. You feel the need to make it back, to avoid further damage. Rules feel slow and insufficient. In both states, the emotional need overrides the plan. The hidden truth is that rules demand something most traders are not trained to give: emotional tolerance. To follow a rule is not to understand it. It is to remain present while it puts you in discomfort. It is to feel the urge to interfere and choose not to. It is to allow uncertainty to exist without trying to resolve it prematurely. This is a skill, not a mindset. And like any skill, it develops through exposure, not intention. This is where position size becomes critical. Many traders underestimate how deeply size affects behavior. They choose risk levels based on what sounds reasonable intellectually, not on what their nervous system can handle. They ask themselves, is this risk mathematically acceptable? Instead of, can I emotionally tolerate this outcome without interfering? When size exceeds emotional capacity, rule breaking is almost guaranteed, not because the trader is careless, but because the system is overwhelmed. This explains why some traders suddenly become disciplined when they reduce size dramatically. It's not because they suddenly matured, it's because the emotional load dropped below their tolerance threshold. The trade no longer feels like a threat, so rules no longer feel dangerous. Behavior aligns naturally. Unfortunately, many traders ignore this lesson and increase size again too quickly, reactivating the same patterns. Another reason rules are broken repeatedly is that traders misunderstand consistency. They believe consistency comes from flawless execution. In reality, it comes from predictable behavior over time. You don't need to eliminate emotional reactions to become consistent. You need to stop acting on them. That distinction matters. Expecting yourself to feel calm is unrealistic. Training yourself to remain inactive while feeling uncomfortable is what actually changes outcomes. This is also why punishment doesn't work. Beating yourself up after mistakes might feel productive, but it reinforces the association between trading and emotional pain. The next time you're in a trade, your brain remembers that pain and tries even harder to avoid it. The cycle deepens. Motivation speeches don't work either, because motivation fades the moment discomfort appears. What works is gradual conditioning, repeatedly proving to yourself, through small exposure, that following rules does not lead to catastrophe. There is a point in every trader's development where the problem stops being about knowledge and starts being about self-regulation. At that point, more information doesn't help. Better strategies don't help. What helps is alignment between risk, emotional capacity, and identity. When those elements are aligned, discipline stops feeling forced. Rules stop feeling restrictive. Execution becomes quieter and less dramatic. The uncomfortable truth is that many traders are not failing because they lack ability, but because they are trying to trade at a psychological level they haven't yet earned. They want professional results with amateur emotional conditioning. They want to feel certain in an environment defined by uncertainty. Until that mismatch is resolved, rule breaking will continue. The hidden reason you keep breaking your trading rules is not that you don't care. It's that, on a subconscious level, those rules threaten your sense of safety, control, or self-worth. And your system is doing exactly what it's designed to do: protect you. Once you understand that, the problem stops being personal. You stop trying to force discipline and start building tolerance. This is where real progress begins. Not when you promise to do better. Not when you add another rule. Not when you find a new strategy. But when you accept that consistency is not about controlling the market or your emotions, but about learning to stay present while both do what they do. That realization changes everything.